You're the president of Williams Baptist University.
That's what they tell me.
Is it lonely to be in your position?
So it's interesting that you ask me that.
Is the average university driven by a left-wing progressive woke agenda?
A lot of the conversations of late have been about this wokeness among universities. And I would say that is a symptom of a deeper core issue. And there's a certain culture in the academic academy, and you've got to pay your dues and sign off on what it means, what it requires to belong to the academy. And if you don't, you can't be a part of it. You got to go along with what the prevailing beliefs and sentiments are, or you're not part of it.
What is a tenured professor?
So in some segments of our culture, tenure is interpreted that I am bulletproof. Unless I just do something illegal, you cannot fire me. Really what it means and how the courts have ruled on this, tenure simply means you cannot be terminated without cause. There's more academic freedom at a faith-based institution than there is at a state school.
So hypothetically, you could be a tenured professor and you could be at an institution for 30 years, and because the ideology has changed or the culture has changed, would they fire you over not having the same beliefs, or would it just be behind the scenes bullying and trying to cancel you?
I think there would be a lot of passive-aggressive pressure. I don't think you would get terminated in that scenario unless you did something publicly that was perceived to be a blatant violation of that institution's commitment.
Which we have seen that the government can quickly rewrite the law, what is hate speech, what is considered to be racist, and then make everybody abide by it pretty fast. It's easy, since we're at a Christian university, to point at the other universities and say, this is where you're wrong. Could they point their finger at us and say, we're doing the same thing?
They do, and they would be right.
Are we not more aligned with the idea of free thinking? Are we more open, or are they more open?
Are these colleges, these universities, are they too far gone?
What we see playing out is just symptomatic of actions and decisions that happened a long time ago.
What is the purpose of a university?
We will be the outlier, not just an outlaw institution from the cultural, social norms that you find at most leftward secular institutions. But even within our own faith commitments and traditions, we're doing something that is unique within Christian higher education too.
And I think if I was at a state university, it would be a lot harder to, I don't want to say find myself, that seems kind of cliche, or
become the ideal person that you envisioned for your life.
And I think this environment has been very, very helpful for me.
I remember being in youth group and my youth pastor talking about how when you get to college, they're going to teach you that there is no absolute truth, and just to be aware of it. And I just remember thinking that's absolutely absurd. And then I came here and obviously taught the biblical foundations in that worldview. And then when I was on staff at a church, I had a young man who didn't go to college come into my office, and he was weeping. He was ready to give his life to Jesus. And he said what prompted him to do that was he just watched God's Not Dead. And while we're talking, he said, he was crying. He said, I had no idea colleges were that bad. And I remember thinking, I don't think colleges are that bad. But I didn't correct him, obviously. And the dude did get saved that night, so it was a really great night. But it's just funny that stuck out to me at the moment. But the perspective that I had of college, before college, during college, and even right after, was that it's not that bad out there. But it seems like it actually is that bad out there more often than not. So there's nothing I can probably say to make the content of this episode of utmost importance to our current students, and especially our future students. I do invite you to listen and consider this with an open mind and some humility, that if you are a student here, you may take for granted that you do have an upper hand. So it was a really fun conversation. Did you enjoy it, Kinsman?
I did. I learned a lot.
Can I ask you a question, though?
Yeah, go ahead.
What I just described as, it seems far-fetched to think that this is actually happening everywhere. Is that how you see it?
I've stayed in the Christian space and environment pretty strictly, so I've always felt like my view has been sort of distorted. I've always thought it's pretty bad out there, but never really, thankfully, had experienced too much of it.
Is that the conviction of your parents?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah.
Because you were homeschooled, your siblings are too, right?
Mm-hmm. So conviction of them, and passed it on to me. So
yeah. See, I was public schooled, so I was fortunate to have pretty good teachers, I think, all through high school.
And really quick, this is our longer format podcast. Please go follow our show, give us a 5-star rating, and write a review. It'd be really helpful to us. And with that being said, let's jump into today's episode. We're rolling.
Dr. Norman,
Brother Bill.
I'm going to avoid the word all right so that you don't make fun of me.
Oh, I'm going to.
When I was in 8th grade, I said the word also a lot, and my friends started making fun of me. And every time I say it to this day, I catch myself, and I quit trying to say it.
Have you ever noticed it? All right. And he doesn't open his mouth all the way. It's kind of, all right.
That's my goodbye.
Yeah, after you say that, I
All
kind of...
right. Yeah.
He does it sometimes.
Yeah. Dog him about it. We're going to break him of this habit.
Can I, like, pinch you next? Or, like, from now on, punch you or something?
No.
No?
No. It is funny that after the work video came out, in the next round of podcast editing, there wasn't, that word kind of flew below the radar.
It really did.
It wasn't intentional because I do not apologize.
Well, whatever happened, it was way less on the next ones. Not that that's bad or good, but
Yep. Well, I know Dr. Putman was very conscientious about it.
he was. He really was.
But not me. I don't care.
It's funny that was the first video of himself he's ever watched, according to him. Like, he's not interested in watching or listening to himself, but that one got his attention. The video's done really well, so thank you for participating in that.
Yeah, thanks for supplying us with some
I'm here.
content.
I'm here to support you guys. It's all about y'all.
Yeah. So, on social media, you have the 5% of people who are just absolutely insane, whether they're like the right-wing conservative or they're super liberal, left-leaning, woke, progressive. And then those 5% become the caricature and the target of all the talking heads on social media and then bigger platforms like CNN, Fox News, and all that. All right, what I'm hearing and what I'm experiencing and seeing is that universities are in bad shape and that they're under the control of political ideologies, mostly leaning left. But is that just the 5% of universities out there? And so it's being the caricature of the university in general is being publicly displayed as negative and bad and brainwashing and indoctrination? Or is it really like 90% of the universities are held captive by this agenda, and we just don't know it because we live in the bubble of whatever town we're in or whatever college we're at? Or I don't know. You have done a lot of research on colleges, and I've been hearing a ton about it lately. And I'm just wondering, is the average university driven by a left-wing progressive woke agenda?
So there are 2 or 3 ways I would want to address it. Number one, it's interesting that there's a book that was written by Dr. Williams and some faculty that were here back in the day. And in his essay, he remarks about his concern that state schools are politically driven. So we're talking back, 1940s and 50s. There was this concern, at least among some, especially in private Christian universities and colleges, that state schools, public institutions, have a political influence over them. And Dr. Williams' argument back in the day was, not Southern Baptist College as it was in that day, because it was a private Christian university, so there was a lot more academic freedom of thought than you could have found at a state school in that day. So fast forward to our day, and a lot of the conversations of late have been about this wokeness among universities. And I would say that is a symptom of a deeper core issue. That is not, I would say, it's not unexpected that a preponderance of institutions have gone that way because a prior commitment went away a long time ago. And so when you have the embrace of a thoroughgoing secularism and coupled with a thoroughgoing commitment, there is no such thing as absolute truth, when those are bedrock to your institution, then you are going to be subject to prevalent social, political, cultural whims, whatever they might be. So the wokeness that we see at a lot of these institutions and universities is not surprising. It's symptomatic of a deeper core problem. And that is, a long time ago, you jettisoned a biblical worldview. A long time ago, you jettisoned an objective understanding of reality. A long time ago, you surrendered to the idea there's no such thing as absolute truth. And when those things happen, then these other things that come are just symptomatic of the core problem.
When did that shift start to happen? Is there like a specific time?
No, in fact, so it depends on where you are. In Europe, just let me speak generally here. It almost seems as soon as a school starts, the battle begins. That there is this pull, these powers and cultural realities begin to pull schools, and by that I mean faculty, administrators, and through them the students, to that worldview. So you may have a school remain strong and staunch in its commitments for a period of time, and like we have throughout our history. So over 80 years, this school has by and large remained faithful to its founding purpose. And there are other schools like our school for whom this is true. But most schools eventually, the pull, the tug leftward just begins to wear, and it begins to chip away. So I think it was in the 90s, James Birchall, who, by the way, did not end his career in Catholic higher education well at all. So setting aside the moral, the immoral problems he had, he wrote this book called The Dying of the Light. It's kind of become a watershed book in higher education, in which he basically makes an argument that any school is two administrators away from completely abandoning its founding premises. Particularly, an institution is two administrators away from abandoning its Christian commitments. Just two. So if you think about the average life expectancy of a college president is about 7 years, well, you do two administrations, you're talking 14, 15 years. You can have a school completely pivot. So it happens quickly. And there are all kinds of reasons why this occurs. Personally, I think it's due in large measure to there is a desire to belong to the academy. Faculty, staff, administrators, they want to belong to the academic academy. And there's a certain culture in the academic academy, and you've got to pay your dues and sign off on what it means, what it requires to belong to the academy. And if you don't, you can't be a part of it. So in order to be a part of it, you got to go along with what the prevailing beliefs and sentiments are, or you're not part of it.
Isn't that backwards for what the university stands for, though? Because when I think about academic freedom, and you think about like a tenured professor, like what is a tenured professor?
Depends on who you ask. So in some segments of our culture, tenure is interpreted that I am bulletproof.
Okay.
That unless I just do something illegal, you cannot fire me. Really what it means, and how the courts have ruled on this, tenure simply means you cannot be terminated without cause. So in theory, a faculty member is on a year-to-year contract. And then when they're awarded tenure, an institution is saying, we want you around, we believe in you, we're going to support you. And so we're going to give you this assurance that you're going to get a new contract every year unless there's cause. Mm-hmm. And each institution defines how it perceives what that cause is. We have certain definitions of cause here at Williams that may not be true for a state school in the state. So if you violate cause here, then we have grounds for terminating your employment here.
Gotcha.
It doesn't make you bulletproof. So to your point, academic freedom gets thrown around a lot. As Dr. Williams rightfully noted in his essay back in the day, there's more academic freedom at a faith-based institution than there is at a state school, because state schools do have political considerations, realities. And we see this play out. I mean, we have seen this play out over the last 5 years, particularly in our culture, where secular institutions, state institutions, public institutions, even a lot of private institutions have bought into what you described earlier as a woke culture, a woke worldview. Mm-hmm. It's just symptomatic of a deeper commitment. You don't go along, you don't get tenure. You don't get along, you may get terminated. And we even saw that in certain segments. Certain institutions did sever employment with maybe more conservative-oriented faculty that didn't go along with their political leftward agenda.
So hypothetically, you could be a tenured professor and you could be at an institution for 30 years, and because the ideology has changed, or the culture has changed, or maybe you're 2 administrators into this new direction, and I mean, would they fire you over not having the same beliefs, or would it just be like behind the scenes bullying and trying to cancel you?
I think there would be a lot of passive aggressive pressure.
Uh-huh.
I don't think you would get terminated in that scenario unless you did something publicly that was perceived to be a blatant violation of that institution's commitment.
Mm-hmm. Which we have seen that the government can quickly rewrite the law, what is hate speech, what is considered to be racist. I mean, they can rewrite the playbook quickly and then make everybody abide by it pretty fast. So,
so it's interesting. This isn't unique to me, but several political public commentators have noted that what I would call a classical liberal at its institution, the younger employees, the younger faculty that have been brought on at that institution are so much further left that those classical liberal positions, they can't catch up fast enough. The ground is shifting every day. And so they may be older and further along in their career, and they don't know how to play along anymore, because at one time they were on the leftward side of the spectrum of that institution's commitment. But now others have come in, and now they're to the right of those that are further left, and they're feeling the pressure of, I don't know what the rules are anymore. I don't know what's expected of me anymore. I thought I was on the left side of this, but there are those further left to me, and now I feel exposed and maybe even a bit threatened.
Yeah, I mean, are they calling for their heads, the younger kids, like you're outdated, we don't need you anymore?
So I think there is some of that. Calling for their heads would be calling for someone to be terminated. These people a lot of them are tenured. They're not going to get terminated because they're not going as quickly left as others. But maybe in their careers they're scrambling a bit, trying to figure it out.
What do students make of that when they see that happening?
I think you'd have to ask the students.
Well, I mean, here's because I see the university as a place where competing ideas can be discussed.
Yeah.
You're supposed to be stretched. The idea of liberal means to be free. So free thinking, think for yourself. And if they're seeing this younger faculty member attacking an older faculty member for having outdated beliefs or beliefs that were left 30 years ago because things have changed so quickly, and are the students at risk?
So let me ask you, what have you been seeing over the last 3 years on these campuses? What are the students doing?
Well, they're creating safe spaces where they're afraid to get offended.
Well, and that's part of it, but they're protesting.
And they're okay, yeah.
So you have so a few months ago, I wrote an article for the Arkansas Baptist News about what is an elite institution in light of a lot of these political unrest and protests at a lot of these institutions. You would hear the news saying, and at this elite institution, you have these students that I'm thinking, at what point does the philosophical commitment reach such a point that we can't say they're elite anymore because they're not even educating classically? They're educating a lot of social political movements of the day that probably are in vogue today and then next week are out of vogue. How can that be elite? But setting that aside for a moment, the student behaviors will tell you who they're listening to. What are the voices that have captured their head and their heart? And so if they're protesting, then that's telling you who has captured their head and heart. If they're advocating for certain political or social issues, that's telling you who has captured the heart and convinced them of that particular worldview that apparently for that moment those students have embraced.
When they're protesting, do you think they're believing, like whatever cause it is, are they truly believing that, or do you think there's a number of them who are kind of just groupthink or like hive mind sort of?
Again, you would have to ask them and talk to them one-on-one. 18 to 22, I would argue, are the 4 or 5 most formative years of a person's life. And at that point, students are looking, as one political commentator said, they're looking for a dragon to slay, they're looking for a belief to embrace. And so at a lot of these institutions, the faculty have either an explicit or explicitly stated commitment. We're going to capture the students, and we're going to give them the dragon, the slay. We're going to give them the position to advocate and to embrace. So for some of them, I would say it's probably very much what they actually think and believe. There may be others caught up in the moment. I think Bill and I could probably speak to this better than you could, that looking backward, there were probably a lot of things that we thought, did, and believed when we were 18 to 22 that we probably wouldn't do today. I'm looking at you, Bill.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah. So, but for the moment, they're in, and for the moment, that's where they are.
And when you think about the founders of this country, they were in their 20s, right? But I think that
they were a little bit older than that.
Okay,
I mean,
well,
George Washington had fought a couple of wars.
But they were not. They grew up in a different time when I think their IQ level was probably quite a bit higher in general. They were educated very differently.
But they were living in a worldview that had a theistic orientation. We don't live in that worldview anymore. Even those that had a deistic bent to them, they still had a belief in a divine being who had some kind of oversight and some kind of responsibility, at least in theism, maybe not so much deism, over the world this divine being had created. And so that really did permeate a lot of the worldview of that day. But don't forget that when this country was founded, when you had these colonial charters established, each colonial charter had an established religion for that particular colony. So you had in New England, you had Congregationalism. Pennsylvania, you had Quakerism. Down in the South, you had Anglicanism. They all had stated faith commitments in which there was an established religion for that particular colony. So Rhode Island, the capital is named Providence. That's not by accident. So you had the worldview there, a theistic worldview that shaped a lot of their beliefs, how they governed, how they conducted themselves. Whether they were born-again believers or not, you still had a prevailing culture and a prevailing influential belief system that was occurring at that time.
It's easy, since we're at a Christian university, to point at the other universities and say, this is where you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Could they point their finger at us and say, we're doing the same thing just with the Christian bent to it?
They do. And they would be right.
They would be right, but are we not more aligned with the idea of free thinking and think for yourself and draw your own conclusions? It's okay to be exposed to different points of view. Are we more open, or are they more open?
So everybody works within some kind of worldview system that shapes how you free think, so to speak. So here institutionally at Williams, we have our confessional commitments. We have, let's use the language of, we have boundaries that mark, okay, anything that happens within this boundary, we're going to consider that a valid idea, a valid belief system. And you can have other ideas outside the boundary, but because we have defined our confessional commitments within these boundaries, then we also have the wherewithal to say, that's probably not a valid worldview. That's probably not a valid belief system. That idea, yeah, it's an idea, probably not a good idea according to our confessional commitments. So the freedom there is, since we have our confessional commitments, we have these ideological boundaries, and we know what they are. We have embraced them. We've been explicit and intentional in defining what those boundaries are. Then we have the freedom to explore within the boundaries and to tease out our worldview and belief systems within the boundaries. And we have the freedom to say, okay, I'm going to go outside the boundary and I'm going to look at this worldview or this belief system or this idea, but I'm going to do it through the lens of my faith commitment. Everybody has a faith commitment. No one is without it. We just have defined what it is. We tell you what it is. We're open and upfront about it. So when we have prospective students come to our campus and I'm talking to them and their families, I will tell them, okay, we're a distinctly Christian university. We would love for the Lord to lead you to be a student here. but you're in the process of looking and exploring where you may want to go to college. Visit other campuses, go to other schools, and ask them what that school's general worldview, general faith commitment, general philosophical approach to higher education is. Ask them, what is your view on truth? If they cannot tell you, that should tell you something. If they can tell you, weigh what they tell you. Do you agree with it? Why do you agree with it? Why do you not agree with it? And do you want to spend the next 4 years or more of your life immersed in that and coming under that perpetual influence or not? 4 years is a long time to spend immersed in a particular perspective or paradigm. And it is rare that a student, 18 to 22, comes out of that unscathed or uninfluenced. So every school has their commitments. Whether they're stated or unstated, they have them. We're just upfront about what our faith commitments are, what our ideological boundaries are, what our confessional parameters are. We'll tell you up front, this is what we are. We're Orthodox, we're Evangelical, we're Baptist, we're Southern Baptist. There it is. You have the option of choosing, do you want to have an institutional formative experience in these parameters or not? It's your decision.
So if I was an atheist and I came here as a student, you would still say that I would get a quality education? I mean, like,
yeah.
Even if I don't conform to, like, your set of beliefs?
Well, Kinsman, we do have kids that come here, maybe not formal atheists.
Mm-hmm.
They may be agnostic, I just don't know. Or they may be uninformed atheists. I just don't believe in God. I haven't really thought about it. I haven't really committed to it. So we do have students that do come to us. But we tell them, if you come here, this is what to expect. Don't be surprised. Don't be caught off guard. And our approach of educating you, of teaching you, of mentoring you, and of training you is going to be this way. So if you came here because you got a great athletic scholarship and that's the prevailing decision maker in your life, that's fine. But this is also going to be a part of your life. And you need to be okay with that. Mm-hmm. You also need to be open to the idea that you may get stretched and challenged in ways that are compelling to you in such a way that you think, maybe I was wrong in my uninformed, unstated atheism or my agnosticism. And I'm going to give some serious consideration to these claims of Christ upon my life and upon my mind.
Mm-hmm. As you should get stretched and challenged at any university, right? Because isn't that kind of,
you would think,
isn't that the goal?
You would
or it
think.
Should be?
So I think there's a lot more opportunity to explore ideas here because we do it from a safe perspective. An average student that goes to a state school, if you begin to lean in a direction that is different than that professor's commitment or maybe that institution's commitment, they will come down on you. There will be almost this passive-aggressive pushback. I don't want to call it persecution, but it would feel like, man, they're making it very uncomfortable for me right now.
Mm-hmm.
So paint the picture of the average student who goes to Harvard or Yale. I mean, are they trying to be tagged by these ideologies just constantly, or shamed out of their, if, like, let's say they do bring Christian beliefs into?
So you've identified what our culture would describe as an elite institution, an academically elite institution. 50 years ago, I probably could have answered that question with a particular clearly identified student profile. I can't do that much anymore.
Isn't that wild?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's because they offer so much financial aid to minority populations, maybe economically depressed populations. By the way, Harvard is not, last time I checked, is not regionally accredited like we are. If it's still the way it is, I haven't looked at it lately, but they didn't have to be.
Could you explain what that means?
So we are regionally accredited by the Higher Learning Commission, HLC. Most schools of higher education are regionally accredited. It's what allows you to get Title IV funding. If you want to get Pell Grants, if you wanted to get a student loan, our regional accreditation allows that validation for us to access those funds on your behalf. It also means if you wanted to get an undergraduate degree here and then go get a master's degree and pursue education elsewhere, then that other institution is going to recognize your accredited degree and will allow you admission to the program if you meet their admissions requirements. So Harvard, because they're Harvard, has not done that. They did not feel like they needed to do that. So, it's nice to be king.
Well, I was going to say, any movie you watch, if you got your law degree from Harvard, you're the top candidate.
So, yeah, now, I guess I'm getting old and surly. Rarely does a faculty resume cross my attention that has a Harvard degree on it, because I don't think a lot of Harvard graduates perceive us as worthy. There is a bit of academic snobbery in some of that. Not all. I want to be clear. Not everyone has a Harvard degree is an academic snob, but there is a prevailing culture among some of them. But if I see a degree from an institution like that, I take a step back and think, okay, they're going to, in my mind, maybe wrongly I'm thinking this, are they bringing baggage that doesn't fit here? Mm. Would they be a fit here? Would they help us advance our mission here? Or are they just looking for a job as a stepping stone till they get something else? Or are they going to come in here and try to change our institution's commitments, which I'm pretty happy with where we are. I don't think we need to change. We haven't for over 80-something years. I want to continue to live in that. It's served us well.
So now that Trump's president, and I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I've seen a cultural shift more to the conservative side lately.
Are you talking about like when you watch TikTok?
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Sure.
No, I know what you mean. I feel that too.
I have a goal in life to never have a TikTok account. I have been faithful to that goal thus far. I bought into several other social media platforms. I can't. I don't want to.
I respect that. I
know I'm feeling left behind. I know I just lost a lot of credit with a lot of students there. No.
This is where they turn the episode off. Yeah. But for those still listening, go ahead, Kinsman.
So I feel like the culture's kind of shifting more to the conservative side in general. So that being said, are these colleges, these universities, are they too far gone? Is it possible for them to kind of relay their foundation?
I go to what I said when we started this conversation. Their shift happened a long time ago. 1920s, 30s, depending on how the institution is, a long time ago. So what we see playing out curricularly, what we see playing out in their faculty and their administration, what we see playing out is just symptomatic of actions and decisions that happened a long time ago. So you made a statement a moment ago about the election of the new president and a shift back to a conservative direction.
You can say his name on here. We won't cancel you.
I don't think there's a shift as much as more conservative-oriented people no longer feel culturally inhibited because they were there all along. And there was, let's just say what it is, there was all along a powerful cultural pressure to conform. Mm-hmm. And we saw corporate America bowing to the pressure. We saw the business community, the medical community, the political community, sports community, the entertainment community, education community. All of these were bowing to that cultural pressure, with the idea that for a lot of them, they had no biblical worldview. They were not theistic in orientation at all. They were thoroughly secular. When I say they were bowing, they were just capitulating to that particular direction as opposed to another secular direction they previously had been on. So with President Trump's election, I perceive it as, number one, a lot of conservative-oriented people that had been silent or afraid are no longer silent or afraid, and they're making their presence known. Mm-hmm. There are others, particularly in the business community, that are pivoting. I mean, it is blatantly obvious that they are perceiving the pressure is now the other direction and being driven by the economic realities that they perceive likely will come upon them if they don't go along. They are pivoting back the other way. So two things are happening in my opinion. One, more conservative-oriented people are making their positions loudly known and no longer are afraid. I mean, I've even heard political commentators over the last 3-4 weeks say that. But secondarily, in the marketplace, the pivoting of a lot of these industries, a lot of these cultural realities back in the other direction. It's not like they become conservative. I think it's just very pragmatic. If we don't go along, we're going to lose money. We don't go along, we're going to be irrelevant. We don't go along, we may shut down, not be able to operate anymore. So we better go along. But I'm under no illusions that there's been any kind of worldview philosophical I hope so. But if history tells us anything, I doubt it.
Well, it makes me proud of our school that we didn't have to shift.
Yeah.
Like we can be who we are, we can be aligned with what our values have been and continue marching forward and know that the government's not going to come in and hold us hostage to believing an ideology that we wouldn't agree with and threaten us with, taking away funding or accreditation or anything else like that.
Well, that's not to say that somewhere down the road those realities may not be upon us.
Sure.
So under a previous presidential administration, there were actions that were overtly taken that were targeting faith-based institutions like ours. I was at another institution, Oklahoma Baptist University, prior to coming here, and during that time there was the outing of Title IX schools that they call it a religious exemption. I'm just calling it taking advantage of Title IX provisions to allow being true to your faith commitment in your institutional expressions and your understanding of gender and sexuality. Well, one in the Department of Education just published a list of all of these institutions that had what they perceived as the religious exemption. It was an effort to culturally bring pressure upon schools like Oklahoma Baptist, Williams Baptist, Washita Baptist, whoever, to get them to bow the knee and to relinquish their religious exemption and buy in to the progressivist agenda of embracing this revolutionary understanding, as they would define it, of gender and sexuality. So to the point you made a moment ago, it has happened in recent times. Now, I wouldn't call that maybe a strong overt, but it was an effort to kind of test the waters to see if there might be some latitude for heavier regulations to get institutions like ours to go along with the progressivist agenda.
How do we stand up against that? Like, what if we did it then, obviously, but what's that attack even look like, or that defense?
About 3 years ago, I was attending a professional conference, and there was a plenary speaker, Dr. Albert Mohler, president of Southern Seminary, and he was speaking on the future of Christian education, Christian higher education. And he said 2 or 3 things in conclusion that were sobering, but true. So I'm in a room with other presidents and administrators at distinctively Christian schools. This is an evangelical organization, so all of the schools that are there are confessional, overtly Christian. So it's not like you have different schools on the political, social, and even more important, the theological spectrum. We're all evangelical in our overall orientation. And he said, be prepared to be an outlaw institution. And what he meant by that was not we're breaking the laws, financially breaking the laws, but an outlaw, being on the outside of the academy, so to speak, because of our faith commitments and the growing secularization of our country and our culture, and by application, education institutions. We're going to be more and more marginalized on the outside looking in. He said, you just need to be prepared to live in that reality. And then he came back and said, base yourself on what lasts. And at that point he went to Acts chapter 2, and he said that the early church devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching. If you want to survive, be faithful to your founding commitment to be a gospel school, a school faithful to God's revelation as contained in the Bible, his written revelation. Be faithful to that. Be faithful to our theological confessional commitments in orthodoxy, classical orthodoxy, evangelicalism, and then to your denominational expression. Embed yourself into what you interpret is that which will last. And then be prepared. You're probably not going to be as big as you once were. And so, it's a very sobering moment to be in a room, to be just forthrightly addressed with those realities. But I've been in Christian higher education now for almost 30 years, first in the classroom as administration. This has kind of been hanging around my whole career in higher ed. The realities of distinctively Christian schools often are on the outside looking in because of those commitments and our unwillingness to waver and relinquish those commitments.
In comparison to other schools that are so I don't want to say poisoned, but they are infiltrated at every level by the government. I mean, it's not tuition dollars that fund the state schools. That helps, I'm sure, but you have the government student loans. You have the government funding research projects and grants. You have the government involved. I don't know, the accreditation groups. Those are not controlled by the Department of Education, I'm assuming, but there is
not directly. In other words,
there is a relationship there.
Our accreditation body is a peer-driven accreditation. Okay. So, in that other academic institutions bring their peer assessment to the accreditation process, depending upon what they think and what they believe. That can influence the accreditation process. They're supposed to do their work by examining the institution's stated mission and how faithful their academic programming, their athletic programming, their extracurricular program, the administration, how faithful they are to their mission. That's what they're supposed to do. And we had an accreditation visit here 2.5 years ago. We had a great group. They understood that, and we had a great accreditation experience. We're good to go for roughly another 10 years.
Good to know. Kinsman, you can graduate from here.
Good to know.
Well, you got to earn it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to go to class and
hopefully I can graduate.
Yeah, that's the goal.
That's what we're trying to do.
I'm very confident that you'll be fine.
Given all we talked about, and given the landscape of Christian higher education versus what could be happening at the majority of universities, is the idea of safe spaces, for example. Is it a good thing that some universities have safe spaces and work to exclude certain ideologies, or does that go back to just defeating? What is the purpose of a university?
So first of all, I would ask you, what do you mean when you say a safe space? What does that look like?
I guess a place free of triggers or words that are going to, or
are you?
I don't even know.
It's like the fact that place even exists is not. That's not a safe space.
Yeah.
Are you talking about the university as a whole, or
no,
within the university there's safe spaces?
Well, I guess you could argue either one.
Okay.
Because I realize there are assigned times and locations of safe spaces, but the university as a whole too.
I really don't give much thought about that. I think that's
fair.
Honestly, I just think it's kind of nonsense. Life doesn't work like that. In the reality of life, if you have a safe space, it's probably your home. But if you're out in the marketplace, you're in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And you are going to be engaging with all types of beliefs, all types of people, all types of perspectives, all types of realities. And the education process needs to be teaching you how to navigate those from a clearly defined, what I would argue, a clearly defined biblical worldview. So at these institutions where you have these safe spaces, I don't even know what that is. Is it that you can go there and say whatever you want to and nobody say anything to you?
No, it's probably the opposite, right?
I just can't imagine if you, especially, well, it depends on how prevalent other ideas are at that school. I mean, it may be so ideologically uniform that nobody's saying anything contrary, then why do you need a safe space? But life's not safe. Life is hard. Life is difficult. We're promised God's presence. We're not promised that we will always be safe. We want safety, but life in this world is a very dicey proposition. So a safe space at an institution of higher education, I think, is just kind of like, I'm going to ride the unicorn for an hour. And then I'm going to get off the unicorn and go back to the real world. So I don't know what purpose those places serve. I don't know how they function. And the students that feel like they need to go there, go to your dorm room if you need a downtime. You should be able to find challenging yet encouraging places in your faculty member's office.
Yeah.
Which, here, one of the tenets of Williams is we're like a family. And I've worked at other institutions. They all say that. This one has its own unique, and I think maybe truer expression of that than most places where I've worked.
I've never been to any other university, obviously, but I will say you can actually build like a genuine connection with them,
Yep.
genuine relationship. Like, even if you wanted to do something non-related to school, like a lot of them would probably be willing to, like, just come over to my house and eat supper.
That's right.
Like,
in fact, to your point,
He's pointing at me.
if you have a confessional, explicitly stated confessional commitment institutionally, that should provide the safe space because you know what the beliefs are, and you're going to be stretched in terms of those beliefs. You're going to be challenged in terms of those beliefs. You may explore other ideas beyond those boundaries, but you're going to still do it from within the boundaries. So our faith commitment, our confessional commitments are the safe space. That doesn't mean we're immune from challenges, immune from competing ideas, immune from some hard conversations. It doesn't mean we're immune from being held accountable. It doesn't mean we're immune from being called on the carpet if we go off the rails in our behaviors and attitudes toward other people. But we know what the safe space is because of the institutional's confessional commitment. That is, in my opinion, if you want to use the safe space lingo, that's the safe place. This is who we are. This is how we operate. This is what we believe. You'll be safe here because of that, but we're going to push you. We're going to challenge you. We're going to hold you accountable. If you mess up, we're going to call you on the carpet for that. If you're not making the grades, you're going to get the grade you earn. But it is within the boundaries of our confessional commitments. That's where I would say the safe space is.
So a student goes to a different university that has a different political ideology, political agenda. They're there for all 4 years, most formative years of their life, and then you fast forward 10 years down the road. Can what they learned outside, like, and I'm thinking like just outside of even like Christianity, obviously Jesus gives us brand new hearts and like a new spirit, but outside of that, is it likely that there's something that's going to happen in their life to undo what has been indoctrinated into them? Or is this, is it just absolutely risky to go to a university that is driven differently?
I would say yes to both. So what I mean by that, I'm going to speak in very general categories here.
Sure.
To the first point you were making, there are things in life that sort of, if you're out there on the left, that might pull you back in a rightward direction. And that is marriage and kids. That tends to pull back to a more conservative orientation. Doesn't mean you're going to be conservative, but when you have the responsibility of caring for other human beings,
mm-hmm.
that brings with it a set of realities that just seem to find a better expression in more of a rightward orientation of life than a leftward orientation. Again, I'm being grossly overgeneralizing here.
Sure.
But that seems to historically often be the case. Another reality is just financial. If you want to live in a world where there is no such thing as absolute truth, and we tell you when we hire you, we're going to pay you this amount of money, and then you get your first check, and it's remotely nothing like that, you're going to want objective reality coming into play on that paycheck. This is what I agreed to work for. Well, there's no such thing as absolute truth, and I'm just feeling today that your work over the last 6 months is about $1. That's what we're going to pay you.
I thought you meant government taxes coming into play.
Well, that's all. Yeah, that's also a part of objective reality in a rightward direction. That no one ever sits with the IRS auditor and say, well, you may say that I owe you that, but I don't think I owe you that. Well, there's no such thing as absolute truth. See how that argument goes. See how that plays out for you.
Well, hopefully Elon Musk can get rid of the IRS, and we won't have to even think about this being a conversation down the road.
Wow.
Not likely to happen, I'm assuming. But
Brother Elon jumped in the conversation.
Well, I'd rather talk about Mark Zuckerberg.
Okay.
Is that cool? Because,
you're the expert on that one.
Well, we've been hearing a lot that he switched his political agenda because of the new president. But I've heard from other podcasters that he got into MMA and realized that when you have to work hard for results and you're being punched in the face, it tends to make you more conservative.
Mike Tyson used to say back in his heyday when he was just obliterating everybody, somebody asked him about his opponent having a game plan or agenda. He says everybody has a game plan. They get hit in the mouth.
Yeah. But no, I think that, like you said, and Mark Zuckerberg, he has a young family too right now, and so that does change it. I think when you add a family, you add more responsibility. It adds a more profound sense of purpose and meaning in life.
One of the social cultural dynamics that play here to see how it's going to unfold are the reality of dinks.
What's a dink?
Dual income, no kids.
Oh yeah.
So that is a growing socioeconomic class in our country quickly. How's that going to play out on the political, social, economic spectrum? In other words, one day who's going to take care of them? Who's going to be paying their Social Security taxes? Dual income, no kids. If you had no kids, the taxes we pay for the Social Security of our parents and grandparents. I'm hoping that there are others coming behind me to pay mine. A little bit of objective reality coming hard on you on the retirement plan.
Well, just save half that dual income for half your life, and
they're not doing that.
And don't be tempted to spend it on anything. And no,
yep,
that's impossible.
Ain't happening.
Or I would assume for most people. Well, can we ask you a personal question?
Sure.
You're the president. Oh, by the way, I told my daughter this morning that I'm getting ready to interview the president, and she goes,
said,
"What?
Mr. Trump,
we're going to be famous?"
Donald Trump. Once again, you've disappointed your daughter.
Yeah. So I'll make her listen to this just to punish her.
Heart.
But no.
Well,
So
before we get into personal,
go ahead.
Is there anything else in higher education discussions you want to explore?
We don't want to bore you with this. We can tell you don't really care about it. And you're not passionate about it.
I care deeply about it.
We know that, and I've heard you talk about higher education in many different contexts. And a lot of the podcasts I listen to right now, they're talking so much about higher education, and so it is really reaffirming to hear them now saying what you have been saying for at least 5 years.
I saw a commercial over the weekend at one of the football playoffs, and I can't remember. It was for a headhunting company, and it was an interview. I think they were at a hotel, and the young lady was interviewing for a position with a guy, and she didn't have a college degree. And so I'm paraphrasing from seeing it quickly off the top of my head. She was asking, so I'm qualified on the business side. That's right. But I don't have a college degree. That's right. So what if I had a degree in Dutch? Would I be qualified? Yes. Dance? Yes. I mean, she starts ticking off a lot of degrees that you find in a lot of state institutions or secondary institutions that I think are just absolutely ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I would be qualified. That's right. But because I don't have it, I'm not qualified. That's right. And then she asked, what's your major? And I think he said Dutch. He's the one.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, okay, post-pandemic, there are a lot of people that no longer think a college degree matters. I can just go out and get a job. And for a lot of people, that's true. But I don't want to leave this without plugging that we're doing something that is different, that addresses the realities of the workforce and the need for and the value of higher education, and we're doing our best to try to bring them together. And I want to use the phrase a workforce university as a way to capture both academically solid education for the head and strong mentoring and leadership training for the heart and the hands. I want to plug it. We are trying to build something that is distinctively and uniquely, well, I think it's innovative, although it's really not. That's the way education used to be. But in our current culture and context, it is innovative and unique. So let me just say, we're doing our best to be more relevant, more elite in the right sense and understanding of that. And what I mean by that is unique, more relevant, more unique, more practical, more exceptional than any other school that I know. And so just plugging Williams that's my job. I think this is a special place with a special mission. That in the broad landscape of higher education, few are trying to do what we're doing here. And so in that regard, we will be the outlier, not just an outlaw institution from the cultural, social norms that you find at most leftward secular institutions. But even within our own faith commitments and traditions, we're doing something that is unique within Christian higher education too.
I need to brag on Kinsman real quick, because you're majoring in business. Okay, you're working in the Williams Works program, so you're working with me, so you're doing digital media marketing.
Unfortunately,
yeah, we all have a cross to bear.
Remember to cut that part out too. So you're doing all that, but then we were at a photo shoot the other day for some trailers, and you mentioned that you roofed one summer, and then the next summer you started your own roofing company because you saw how much more money you could make doing it that way, and you had to have a smaller crew.
So,
but you literally were the administrator for it, and you go. Were you going to say something?
Well, we just happened to have back-to-back really bad hailstorms in 2 summers, so that's one reason why I did it, because it's just our town. We had a really good opportunity, for that. But
so you did that, and then you were in my car yesterday, and you're like, "Hey, you hear that noise? That's probably this." And that's pretty easy fix for somebody like me. But you can go pay another guy a lot of money to fix it for triple the price. But I just think about, like, you're a freshman here, you have all these different skill sets, and you're getting a college degree, and just think about the power of, like, your mind and hands combined. You're just going to be an unstoppable force here in a couple of years. So just want to say, like, that really is, we're seeing that come together in this guy. So
well, and to dovetail onto that, I have talked with a lot of families who have students graduate high school say, I'm just going to go work for myself, or I'm going to just get a job. I still would say, if you're going to be like an electrician, are you going to work for somebody your whole life, or do you want to eventually be your own entrepreneur and your own boss?
Right.
You're still going to need to know about payroll taxes. You're still going to need how to market your business. You're still going to need to know how to financially manage an account. So the wedding of work, even the trades, with a bachelor's degree is a powerful opportunity for leadership and for life. I believe that.
Yep. Setting the degree aside completely, when you leave high school, I feel like that's like when the most development happens. You kind of start to become your own person, and just to have the ability to be in a Christian environment, start to learn how to live on your own. You don't have as many, negative forces coming at you. So I honestly, and I've seen that even in my own life coming down here, like, I think that's been super, super beneficial. And I think if I was at a state university, it would be a lot harder to, I don't want to say find myself. That seems kind of cliche or whatever, but
become the ideal person that you envisioned for your life.
Yeah.
And I think this environment has been very, very helpful for me.
I want to ask you a personal question before we leave.
Yes, sir.
You're the president of Williams Baptist University.
That's what they tell me.
Is it lonely to be in your position?
So I'm going to ask a question back at you first, maybe two. I'm curious to know what the background of that question is.
Can I say my viewpoint? Like, if you're in Walmart and you see your pastor, and you're just like what are you doing outside of this one context? Or like anyone with authority over you. I don't know. I just thought when you said that came into mind, like, whenever you see people out and about, or if I were to see you, I would maybe be like, oh no. Like,
oh no.
He has
the first thing you think of, hey, oh no.
He has authority over me. So, like, there's just that filter through every single conversation you have with people,
So, that's good.
So what's behind your motivation for the question?
Well, you have the students that I guess all the appeals in at your desk, if it gets to the highest level, like, you have to be the bad guy.
Yeah.
Faculty and staff, you have to be the guy who says no to ideas or to projects or to you have to make you alone make some pretty tough decisions. Then there's the board. Like, you have people to answer to and people to appease and to ensure that you have a stable life here. Like there's just so many considerations that you alone have to balance, and almost there's no co-president who is Team Norman with you that you can run everything by. It's an island. So that's where the question is, and obviously, hopefully, it feels there's no evil intent in that question.
I understand.
Just wondering,
I understand. Just was clear about the background. So, in light of what you just said, what do you think the answer is?
Absolutely.
So it's interesting that you asked me that. Several months ago, I read an article from a pastor, and the article was that every relationship in my life has lines. And by and large, though not absolutely, that's true. I live on campus. I work on campus. We play on campus. The majority of my life is embedded in this university, physically, emotionally, mentally, relationally. And so in light of that reality, to your point, Bill, well, in every relationship that I have, in the greatest reality of my working life, there are those lines. And while we can have interactions and conversations and even pleasant exchanges and even joke with each other, those lines never go away. And I'm very cognizant of those lines, either lines for the people that work here at the university, work for me, or the lines with my board that I work for them. That can create a feeling of distance and a feeling of guardedness. And on occasion, a sense of being alone. Now, I say that with the caveat, I kind of knew what I was getting into, so don't feel sorry for me, and don't cry for me, because I don't feel sorry for myself. Don't pity me. This is the job. This is the reality to which God has called me. So on that side, there are those occasions in which there is that sense of lines everywhere. God does promise his own presence with us. So it's not like we are, I feel abandoned or feel alienated. God is with me. And we do have friends. And even in the university, there is a sense of community in which there is a rich exchange of relationships and of certain friendships and interactions that are meaningful and rich and are very much appreciated. But there are those moments. But I think that's true for anybody. I don't think that is unique just to me and the position I currently have. I think pastors have it. I think parents have it. I think anybody that is out in the world experiences that sense of isolation. So we are involved in local church, and we have chosen to go to a church in which I'm just a regular church member, try to be, and enjoy those relationships in that way. And a lot of friendships come through that. That's very helpful. That's what the purpose of the church is, provide that sense of community, a sense of belongingness that maybe is not always readily available in a work environment.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if a lot of people remember that. It's and not obviously just for you, but just in general, that, you know, whether it's a CEO, a pastor, that you're human and you have emotions, and nobody enjoys feeling lonely all the time, but you play an important role in our lives, that you make decisions and take care of things in a way that we may not agree with in the moment, but hopefully one day we'll come to appreciate and even be thankful.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. I do appreciate that.
Yeah. I go to Harvest Baptist Church in Paragould, and anytime somebody finds out that I either affiliate with Williams or work at Williams, they immediately want to talk about you and how much they miss your preaching. They love Laramie, but
so glad he's gone.
They were just
we didn't think I would ever leave.
Yeah. Was that hard, pastoring a church and
Yeah.
Being a president of the college?
Yeah, because I went in just to be the interim, and then they decided they want to do the relocation thing. They want me to be part of that. And then the pandemic. So, yeah. So, fortunately, there was a great ministry team there.
Yeah.
And then there was a great lay leader team there, and could not have done it, would not even have tried without those people. They were so good. And it was a team effort. It really was. And I was just, Joy and I, we say this now, we were blessed to be part of that period of time at that fellowship of believers. It was, looking back, almost like a mini, small kind of renewal, reviving of God of that fellowship. And it was a blessing to be able to be a part of that.
Yeah. And I know that when you moved them out of the building to a temporary location, got the new building built, and then passed it off to the new pastor.
Yeah.
So it didn't change zip codes, but everything else, like the name changed.
Yeah.
And this is an established traditional church.
Yeah.
And we love it there.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't. Yeah. Like the people are great. The church is great. It's just
that makes
really
me
good.
So encouraged and happy to hear.
Yeah.
We for the first time since we left, we actually went back and visited a couple of Sundays ago.
We were in overflow, and I kept hearing him talk about you. I'm like, I bet Dr. Norman and Joy are in the sanctuary right now.
Yeah, it was so good.
Yeah.
They treat me better than I deserve.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of pandemic, you started playing the guitar again during the pandemic?
So, maybe.
Okay.
So,
or you started collecting guitars.
Yeah, that's probably better.
That's
so
the way Joy would describe it.
When I was a kid, I started taking. Actually, my first instrument was the piano. I played piano for 6 years. I competed with the National Guild. So,
what does that mean?
That means you actually go and you are vetted.
Okay.
And you may be judged independently, or you may be with a group. I don't even know if thing exists anymore. And you may be judged according with others in your skill set.
Okay.
So did that, and then as a lot of junior high kids are prone to do, I quit. But I also picked up the guitar and started playing in junior high. And then it got real serious, or as serious as it can get in high school. I started playing at my church Bible study with other guys that were much better than me. And it was interesting, you brought up a memory. So I grew up in southeastern Oklahoma, and this is going late 70s. So if you've seen the movie The Jesus Revolution, it finally made its way to Oklahoma in the late 70s. So a lot of the music that you may have heard in that movie, we were singing we was at Bible study. A lot of Larry Norman stuff, the two-hand song that was playing in the background. We were playing that. And when you play with other musicians, hopefully you get better. And I think I would like to think I got better. And then a buddy of mine wanted me to accompany him, and he could sing really well. We started playing churches, and that kind of evolved into a high school country western band. And then my senior year, I had to face the reality of we were starting to get requests to play in places that could have taken my life in a different direction. And I'm playing at church, and you just kind of have to make this I'm straddling the fence decision here. I got to, who am I going to be? How's this going to play out? Mm-hmm. And with no judgment to my buddies that were in the band, they were much more talented than I was, and I just decided for me I needed to not do that anymore. And so I leaned into that. Well, I get in college, and I tour a couple of years with our.
Where'd you go to college at?
I started out at Southeastern Oklahoma State University, and it showed up on my Facebook feed yesterday. A group that was sponsored out of our Baptist Student Union called. This is so hokey.
This is the name of the worship team. Whatever you say is what it's going to be.
It was called Basic.
Yeah, we're not going to do that.
It stood for Brothers and Sisters in Christ. And
Brothers and Sisters in Christ. Okay, so it's spelled basic.
Yeah, and we toured. And I did that for a couple of years, and then I transferred schools, went to seminary, and just put the guitar down. And
is that because you picked the books up?
Life.
Okay. Like, so
life
you got married.
Happened. Got married, started having children, went to seminary, became a pastor. So, I still clung on to, 1982, I had a special custom ordered Ovation. Cost me everything I had. And he had to finance the residual with the music store at the time. And I kept that thing, wouldn't let my son, who's a much better musician than I am, take it. And then one day during the pandemic, Joy came in and said, she was talking to my youngest son, said, Fender Guitars offering online lessons free for 3 months. You should pick up your guitar. Well, she just told the drug addict, smoke this or drink this. Oh, man. So, yeah, I've started to try to play again. But, yeah, so
it's Joy's fault. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. I'm sure she'll see it that way.
She found a promotional flyer of the group.
Oh, my goodness. There are brothers and sisters in that picture.
See if you could find me.
All right.
So for our listeners, I've given Bill my phone for him to try to locate me in the lineup.
You're right there.
Life was hard. That was me. I was 18 years old.
So did you quit or were you forced out?
Oh, probably both. But anyway, back to your previous question. I'm trying to resurrect what was neglected for 35 plus years.
And
it's not going very well.
Does it feel like an escape from?
Yeah. So when I go home and if I have the energy after the day, I'm trying to learn fingerstyle. So I cannot sing vocally, so I have to sing with my hands. So I'm trying to learn how to play the guitar, not just flat picking, not just strumming, but fingerstyle finger picking. Mm-hmm.
What I've learned about myself is that if I'm stressed or overworked or anything like that, I have a hard time picking the guitar up. And it might go months where I don't pick it up. But when things calm down and I feel at ease, I'm much more inclined to pick it up for 15, 20, 30 minutes.
So sometimes my efforts on guitar are compounding the frustration and stress.
Yeah.
They're not alleviating it.
Dr. Norman, thanks for joining us for this long format podcast.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Yep.